Welcome everyone to this session on applying AI for improving reproducibility. In this session, we are going to explore whether AI is aiding reproducibility or is decreasing its ability to, we've made some strides in reproducibility. Where can how can AI actually help us? So to begin with, we have Erik Gundersen, who is going to be presenting reproducibility at scale in the age of AI. Erik started exploring these topics quite a while ago. He is a Norwegian computer scientist and artificial intelligence researcher, currently as an associate professor at the Department of Computer Science at Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim. He's also the chief AI officer at NTNU AS, a renewable energy company, and a co-founder for Verter AS, a startup focused on AI-driven driver education. So Erik, take it away.
Thank you very much. So I just recently changed jobs. So now I'm the AI principal at the Norwegian Armed Forces. So that's my primary job. At university, I teach and I supervise math students and I research, but not reproducibility. That's my hobby. So this is what I do during nighttime, basically. And I've done this for quite some time. And I was attending a conference on case-based reasoning, an AI method, in 2012. And I was listening to this keynote by a professor called Yolanda Gill. And she was talking about sort of some need to capture the work processes of scientists when doing experiments, and she asked the case-based reasoning community for help in doing this. And sort of on the side note, she just mentioned because there is a reproducibility crisis going on, and this was in 2012. And to be honest, this sounded like a terrible problem. So I wondered, why didn't everyone sort of research this? Because it sounded so important to me. And I started digging into it. And being an AI researcher and computer scientist, I was I wanted to sort of understand how we were doing in AI, and I started looking into that. And today I want to talk about scale in different ways, and scale as we have sort of met scale in our sort of research team. Math students I've supervised and some PhD students, we have been looking into this. And in the age of AI, it has helped us. But first, before I sort of start talking, I want to talk a bit about where I think we are going, what we are working on our group, and what we've been doing. I want to give you some examples and show you what we have been working on. And first, I want to talk about, so what are the barriers to reproducibility? What is it that sort of meet us? And I think this picture here describes it. This is a picture for a paper that we wrote earlier this year. And we have collected sort of all the papers from the top AI conferences, AAAI, iClear, ICML, ICHKAI, NeurIPS, and we've looked at them and analyzed them. And as you see, in 2014, it was 1,200 papers published in these 5 conferences. But in 2024, the number rose from 1,200 papers to 12,000 papers in 2024. So that's 10 times the amount of papers. So this proliferation of AI research makes it really, really hard to reproduce AI papers because it's so many more papers. And as Tanu um, suggested, that this might be even harder with AI, the latest sort of improvements in AI with Gen AI, where AI is used to perform research, do literature surveys, and maybe even conduct research. And I don't expect this sort of the increase to be a slow down. Yeah, I expect it to increase even further. So the sheer number of papers that we have to reproduce if we want to understand whether the published sort of body of literature actually documents knowledge or it's just sort of noise, not a pattern. And another barrier is the time it takes to reproduce a paper. So this is some results from a paper that I wrote with 4 master students, 3 master students, and we actually did this research in 2018. We collected 30 papers, the most cited AI papers for 3 different years, 10 of them, 10 for 3 different years, and we decided to reproduce them. And we could only reproduce 22 of these because 8 of them we didn't have access to the data. So collecting data, it's such a huge problem collecting this data. It was medical data, for instance, and collecting all the medical data. That is not a project that we could do in the time we had, which was basically 2 semesters. So we just had to lead them out. So it tells you the time it takes to collect data. It's really, really hard. So we didn't even try to reproduce those papers. But we had 22 papers left. And we decided that we were going to set aside 40 hours to reproduce each papers. That is a work week in Norway. So we thought, okay, we should have 1 work week to reproduce a paper, set aside that. And this was sort of efficient work on the paper. So no breaks. This is not lunchtime. It's sort of the time we actually try to reproduce papers. And you can see that there were 1 paper could document 1 experiment or several experiments. And the paper that produced sort of or reported most experiments, it was sort of 68 experiments. And of course, we weren't able to reproduce all these experiments. So what you see here is a graph from this paper we published last year in 2025 at Triple AI. And this is sort of the percentage of experiments that we were able to reproduce for these papers in 40 hours. So only for 3 of these, we were able to reproduce the complete paper in 40 hours. And for some of them, we weren't able to reproduce any of the experiments for different reasons. We weren't just able to complete the research. We decided only to try to reproduce papers that shared data. So we didn't collect the data, but some of the papers shared code and some didn't. And those who didn't, we had to write all the code from ground up. And for those who shared code, they didn't share all the code. They might only share a library with a method they were researching, or maybe they didn't share the method, only the sort of the experiment code that executed this method that they didn't share. So we had to write code even for the papers that shared code. So you see that the time it takes to reproduce 1 paper is a lot, and 40 hours, not surprising to anyone who tried to reproduce paper, was not enough, basically. So that is another barrier. Of course, with the amount of papers that is produced, it is a huge barrier. And then, of course, the documentation is a problem as well. And of course, we all do our best, but sometimes that is not enough. We forget stuff. We're humans, so we don't document all the things that should be documented. We document the things that we think are important, but that might not be the things that are important. And in this paper, when we were reproducing these 22 papers, we documented the problems we had, and we saw that there were problems with the code, with the article, with the data, and the results even, and the resources that they used to uh, to perform these experiments. For the code, it wasn't documented. It didn't contain what they said it should contain, and so on. The article was ambiguous. It didn't have all the information we needed. The data was not documented very well. The results weren't reported in tables, or they didn't share the actual results produced by the code. Some of them only shared it as a graph, and that was hard to reproduce. One of these papers we tried to reproduce was the AlphaGo paper, and of course the sheer amount of GPU time that they had available for training this AlphaGo algorithm was so huge we couldn't even start doing it. But what we found when we looked closer was that we tried to see, are there any of these issues that correlate with not being able to reproduce results? And we found that, yeah, code, if the code lacked, as long as they shared some code lacked, it was poorly documented, didn't mean anything. If the article was ambiguous, it described the method ambiguously, or the experiment, or the implementation, or whatever. That wasn't sort of a huge signal of problems. Of course, if we didn't have the resources, we couldn't reproduce it. If you don't have an hadron collider, you cannot sort of reproduce those experiments. Of course, it makes sense. It doesn't mean that these experiments aren't reproducible, of course. What we saw was that if the data was poorly documented, we had a hard time reproducing the results. And to me, this, after having thought a bit about it, this indicates for me that maybe we shouldn't trust the conclusions. But because if we have to resample the data in a different way than the original authors did, and we don't get the same results as they, we're not able to draw the same conclusions. Well, then I don't think their findings are robust. But what do I know? Of course, there are many sources of reproducibility. This is from a paper that is on arXiv, or still working on, where we try to sort of identify sort of the different sort of sources of reproducibility. We've divided them into 6 different factors and organized them into sort of different sort of variables. So you can say that the study design could be an issue. The experiment design is problematic. There's p-hacking going on, and so on. Many different things in the study design that can be poorly, can lead to reproducibility. And for us who do AI, some of these AI methods, they are stochastic, and you use stochasticity in different parts of the algorithms and in the setup, and of course this will affect results, and it can make your results or conclusion irreproducible. Implementation factors, the initialization seeds for random number generator. If you have different software versions, if you have parallel execution, so on, it will affect the results of your paper, and you can we can draw different conclusions from the original authors if we try to reproduce. So data sets, problems with data. You might not sample population that reflects the actual population in the world, of course. So there might be problems. You might augment it in some way that sort of affects the data, and so on. And of course, the way you evaluate your research could make it irreproducible. You might be overclaiming. You might have metrics that sort of like sampling and so on can lead to irreproducible results. And of course, if lacking documentation, as mentioned, readability of the paper, for instance, if it's poor, it's hard to understand what's been done. And of course, if the workflow of the paper is not clear and sort of different steps are mixed, we might get different results. Of course, access to data and code could lead to irreproducibility. So we try to sort of make a taxonomy of sort of these issues of reproducibility. And in this paper where I said we found that the data was the issue, if you hadn't documented data, we identified, we got some results. We saw that if you only had shared the data, when we tried to reproduce your research, we were only able to reproduce 33% of your research. And of course, if you shared both code and data, we were able to reproduce 86% of the results. So, and these are, as I said, you saw that we weren't able to reproduce all the experiments reported in papers. So these are very uncertain numbers, but I think they tell something. And 22 papers. It's a very small sample. It's statistically significant? I don't know, but it's the largest sort of pool of papers being reproduced in a very systematic way. There are others who reproduce more papers than us, Edward Raff, for instance, but he didn't sort of follow a protocol and do that in a very structured manner. And we did a much broader sort of a set of papers than he did. So different studies. But what we see, if you share code and data, we'll be able to reproduce more. And if you only share data, we will be able to share less. And based on these numbers, we made an experiment. So I said we've analyzed all these papers from the top 5 conferences over 12 years. It amounts to 56,800 papers. So now we're talking scale. So these few 22 papers, that is a small scale. 56,800 papers, that is a much larger scale. But we couldn't reproduce them. But we were only estimating the reproducibility based on whether they shared data and code or not. So this figure here is not very easy to grasp. I'll try to explain it. Sort of yellow and orange. This is the reproducibility rate. So these are the papers sharing code and data, and as you see, it increases over time. The dot strike line there, you see it increases over time, and this tells us that the documented research, according to the numbers that we collected in the other studies, we are increasing. We're going from less than 30% reproducibility to over 60% reproducibility over these 11 years. And of course, there's a share of papers that is not reproducible. And the blue line this is the set of papers where we're not able to this blue area is the set of papers we're not able to estimate because they lack both code and data. So we have no numbers for them. But in general, it looks like we're doing well. So this is this paper hasn't been published yet. It's been submitted. We received reviews actually today, so we expect it to be published fairly soon. Yes. Okay, so this was just an estimation. But we're going to talk about reproducibility and actually reproducing stuff. And one of the things when I tried to understand reproducibility in 2012, I said, okay, but what is reproducibility really? Then I realized that no one had sort of tied this to the scientific method, and sort of this scientific method wasn't really well described. So I had to sort of describe it for myself so I could understand reproducibility from this. And well, you know the scientific method. This is the nice figure, trying to replicate it. So you have the world, you have beliefs about the world. Based on these beliefs, you form sort of scientific theory, and you want to test it. So you sort of generate a hypothesis, based on this. So this is the idealistic way of thinking about science, of course. And when you have this hypothesis you want to test, you design an experiment and you document it in a research protocol. So you write this research protocol that should contain a hypothesis, prediction about this hypothesis, the study plan, and the analysis plan. And then, of course, you have to carry out, design, and actually an experiment and carry out the experiment. And we do this in software, being a computer scientist, and at least me being an AI scientist. And then we carry out this, we get an outcome. For instance, we want to see whether we are able to classify cats and dogs images. So we put labels to images, and this is sort of the outcome. The label to each image, that is sort of the outcome we get. And then we have to analyze this result. We have the outcome using some type of metric or graph or whatever, do some analysis. We can do an error rate, for instance, and then based on this, we could, if we want to compare two algorithms, we could say algorithm A has a larger error rate than algorithm B, so algorithm B is better. That is our interpretation. And then if we thought algorithm B was the best algorithm, well, then our hypothesis was supported, and that is the conclusion that we draw, which strengthens our beliefs about the world. So this is sort of the scientific method in a way, and of course reproducibility. It is not this, because reproducibility is not. It's actually not testing this hypothesis. It's testing a hypothesis about the research that is presented by someone else. Is this research true or not? If I do this experiment, will I get the same result or not? This is actually the hypothesis you're testing. So, and I sort of, the reproducibility, you know it, you've heard about it, you read about it and defined it yourself. I wanted to make a definition that was tied to this scientific method. So I defined it as reproducibility is the ability of independent investigators to draw the same conclusions from an experiment by following the documentation shared by the original investigators. So three important things here. Independent investigators. So in computer science, it's not enough that I give you my computer where I implemented my experiment and hand it over to you, and then you press enter, and then you run the experiment. That is not enough. So there needs to be some independence there. Something needs to be different. You have to read my experiment and understand it, look at the code, run it on your computer at least, and then we know that's different. You've validated my thoughts, and you run it on your computer that is different from my computer. Might be a different OS, might be different versions of the software, and so on. So independent investigator is important. And you should draw the same conclusions. You don't need to produce exactly same outcome, but if you see that algorithm A is worse than algorithm B, well, we draw the same conclusion. So we agree, and you reproduce my results. And you should follow the documentation I share. So if I share only a paper, you read this paper, you re-implement the software, you run it on some data, and then if you draw the same conclusion, well, you reproduce my research. But of course, if I share my code and data, you can just use that and rerun it and try to reproduce the results. So this is what I mean about reproducibility, and documentation is important here. What do I mean about documentation? Exactly. In computer science, it has sort of three different types of documentation. We have the paper, the description of what you've done. You have the code that implemented your experiment in. And then, of course, you have some data that you run on this. Maybe you don't have data. Maybe it's only a simulation, so you only have code. Okay, but these are sort of the three different types of documentation we can share in my world, at least in machine learning. Okay, so the reproducibility experiment, I said it's kind of different than the original experiment because the reproducibility experiment has two types of input. It's the input that is the documentation whatever documentation you shared with me, whether it was the data, the code, and the paper, or it was only the paper. I take this documentation, I add something to this documentation. If it's only my computer, or if I had to write a code, something different here that I bring into the experiment. And then based on this combination of these two inputs, I do the experiment and I draw a conclusion. And if my conclusion is the same as your conclusion, I reproduce this. And that is sort of the reproducibility experiment. It's a different type of experiment than the experiment you did as the original investigator. So just to make this very, very clear, I had this experiment. So in AI, as I said, you can have the study protocol even as code. You can digitize the data. You can have the algorithm as code. The performance metrics and analysis can be all done in code. Feed that into the reproducibility experiment. It has to be run on my computer and sort of my software. Maybe it's different software packages from what you did, something different, and then I produce the outcome and I compare it to your outcome, or I analyze the results, look at the analysis, and I interpret this. If I conclude the same as you do, we agree, we reproduce it. And so why is this important? Okay, so this is important because when we are going to scale reproducibility, what the type of documentation we have will say something about the scale. And I want to sort of talk about sort of what we are working on now and how we are thinking about sort of this AI world and what AI can do for reproducibility. And I will do that through three different use cases and sort of elaborate on them. So first, we have this use case that I call is to improve documentation. You can think of AI here as a research assistant that helps the original researchers that is trying to do some experiments and do some research. Say that, okay, I have this experiment I made. I want you to help me ensure that I'm doing good research and make it reproducible for others. And that might be to read the paper, identify stuff that hasn't been documented, that should be documented for others to be able to reproduce your research. It could be to look at the code and document the code, make it help others to read the code and understand it and run it, of course. And it could be to document the data well. And as you're probably aware, there's this paper data sheets for data sets by Gebru et al. Very nice paper. This is what you should think about when you document data, of course. And but it could also, this research assistant could also identify bugs in your code. Say, oh, I see you have a bug here. That might give problems. Of course, there's Anya Bells, Scotland. I think she's been published a paper where they saw lots of bugs in code. So claims were made, but they were based on buggy code. So that they might be irreproducible. So identifying these bugs in the code, but also bugs in the reasoning. So did you design an experiment that actually tests your hypothesis? That could also be a type of bug that we researchers can end up with and should avoid. And as of course, this research assistant could help us identify this, and of course, maybe even look at data. Does the data look sensible? Yeah. So bugs in data
Or
as well.
Yep. I'm sorry, I to stop you, but yeah, we have another 8 minutes.
8 minutes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. No worries. No worries. That's enough time. So second use case here is from it's from the view of the independent researcher who wants to stand on the shoulders of the giants before him, and won't help to reproduce papers. So you can have a research assistant that help you reproduce some research done by others. So it could help you identify what is this code or data, how you should run it, and fill out the blanks, and help you sort of write the code that's not finished or not shared. It's going to help you understand ambiguities and potential solutions in the paper and so on. It could help you identify the code and data on the web. Yes. So this is a potential use case. So someone helping you to actually reproduce the research done by others, and we organized a workshop at AAAI this year, and there were several papers that was sort of discussing these two use cases, that previous use cases. I have someone help the original researcher, someone having an assistant that helps someone try to reproduce it. Very useful. It will cut down the time to reproduce paper. One of the papers presented at this workshop, they took one of these paper that we had reproduced from these 22 papers we reproduced, and while we spent 40 hours, something like that, reproducing it, they just did it in 30 minutes. This is sort of the amount of time they saved by having this assistant. And then, of course, and this is the what I'm imagine here. I want sort of, why shouldn't all publishers use AI to quality assure the papers that have been submitted to them? So you can imagine you have an AI assistant that helps you reproduce papers by actually reading the paper, running the code and data. You should submit that when you publish a paper, and they can sort of just say, yes, 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 we see that when we run this, we get sort of the same result as you do, and the claims that you do are supported. And of course, this could be done automatically. This report could be sent to the editor and say sort of, okay, this is result. Do you want to send it to reviewers? And then if you want to send this research to the reviewers, then of course you can add this report as well, and let the reviewers look at that and get sort of a deeper understanding of the research. Few times I have time to sort of dig into code and data, so having such a report would actually be very helpful for me as a reviewer, because often I only review the paper, not all the work. That is so many papers to review, so don't have time for this. That would be a dream scenario. But there is sort of the third use case, which is sort of the fourth use case, which I didn't even mention. So you could have the AI read the paper, and instead of running the code, it could just develop the software itself based on description in the paper, so that you have an independent implementation, different bugs, maybe no bugs, and run it on the same data. Or you could even have the AI identify similar sets of data that should have the same type of properties as the data that was presented in the original paper that you were producing. And then, of course, you could have an agent comparing the results automatically, say that, yes, these are the claims are supported for these reasons. So I've reproduced this paper, and this is what we presented basically at the workshop at AAAI. Of course, not all of this, only the first part, read the paper, but even reading the paper is really hard, because you have to understand what are the hypotheses that are being tested, what are the experiments related to this hypothesis, and what are the results and the interpretation of them. And so making this explicit is hard, because it is not made explicit in the paper. We have lots of suggestions or indications. We're very ambiguous about this, but it's not clearly written. So even for an AI to do this is kind of hard, but it is possible. So that is really, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to go. This is what we are working on right now, and we hope to have exciting results in the future, in the short term even. And before I finish, I just wanted you to see a different type of scale that we're working on in reproducibility, and this is from a website we are launching fairly soon. It's the Reproducibility Index. It's reproducibilityindex.ai. It hasn't been launched yet, so we will not find it there. It's hosted on the web, but on a secret address. Here we have analyzed papers from all the top AI conferences and all the top AI journals that have sort of open publishing and open articles on the web. We've analyzed them for reproducibility, and we are ranking them on reproducibility. We are ranking institutions on reproducibility and countries on reproducibility. We expect someone to not like this very much, but it will be launched soon. I hope you'll see it. Reproducibility.index. I expect it to be launched before during the spring, maybe before summer. We want to do this as part of 2 papers that we have written and sort of launch this website at the same time. And here we have analyzed around 80,000 papers. And the idea is to continuously do this every year for every conference and for every issue of these journals, so that you can sort of understand how we are going with reproducibility in AI. So if you're interested, watch out. They will it will be online soon. We have done lots of research on reproducibility and AI. Here's most of the papers, if not all. We have some others in coming that is being written. These have all been submitted or accepted. And thank you. This was my talk. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Yes, Daniel.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah. I'm Daniel Kuhn. I'm from CU Boulder here. Nice talk. Thank you. So one question I have is, do you see a trend in things being impossible to reproduce? So I've heard that, for example, frontier labs are not publishing anymore in these top conferences, or the ones that are publishing, they use so much compute that it's basically impossible for anybody to reproduce. Do you see that trend? Is that going down in terms of, things being like just not possible for anybody to reproduce unless you have a huge amount of funding?
I think you're right. And so this is what we see. This sort of the foundational labs, they still publish at conferences, but this is sort of not their main work, sort of the LLMs mainly, or these huge deep learning models that they are developing. And this is so in AI for a very long time has been the research has been sort of done by fairly small group of people, and sometime in 2012 around there, AI research was moved from academia to industry. And to begin with, in industry, the research was actual research, and they hired people that were researchers and wanted to publish. But this has changed, because now what was research before has become products. And when stuff has become products, as the LLMs and Gemini and all this image generator, then you cannot share everything, because you lose sort of your competitive advantage. And of course, it's a huge amount of data. There are so many copyright issues with the data. They don't, of course, want to share this. And if they share the data, well, then everyone can train their models on it, and they lose competitive advantage. So I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. And so this type of work might not be very reproducible, but you see, in some way, all these AI labs, they reproduce each other's research. So if you have the amount of resources that they have, then you see that they are able to research, to replicate the research and reproduce it. So that is the good thing. So we see that the claims made by some are reproducible, not the AGI claims, but sort of the good performance claims. Yeah, I think.
Yes, Valerie, please go ahead.
So as a follow-on to the question, so this is Valerie Taylor at Argonne. I wonder if you can comment on the research that's being done with the use of LLMs, where you see a lot that's talking about, for example, the prompting that's done, the actual workflow with the use of LLMs, and the fact that you do have some randomness in terms of what the LLMs produce, which may affect reproducibility. So I would welcome your thoughts in that space, because you're seeing where LLMs are being used in terms of the space of code generation, a great deal in the computing area.
Yeah, and this is a huge issue. So you're completely correct. LLMs, they are probabilistic, they are stochastic. This generates issues. And of course, if you ask the question several times, you will get different answers from the LLM. So this is correct, and you don't have the data, you don't have the learning algorithms themselves. You might have the weights, but that is sort of not open source. So you're not able to reproduce the results still. And of course, if you have prompts and if you're doing analysis using your LLMs, you should share the version of the LLM you, of course, used and the prompts you're using. But this is not complete reproducibility. However, do I think we should do research still? Yes. Of course, and we analyzed sort of this amount of papers, and we can only do that using LLMs. And doing this research costs of several $1,000s. So it's not cheap, but it's not impossible either. Now we can do sort of much larger scale research than we were able to do before, and sort of get some estimates and do new things. So I think that is valid. But you're totally right that we have issues when we don't own the tools. We don't see the inside the black box of the tools. We have some issues, but I think we have to live with that for some types of research, and I'm doing it. So I'm So this research is not 100% reproducible, but we've tried to sort of discuss the limitations of the research, and yeah, absolutely. Did that answer?
You did. Thank you.
Or in the interest of time,
sure.
Maybe we would have to move to to other ones. People can reach you by email. I don't know whether you're going to be staying with the session or
no.
It's late.
It's late here, and I'm actually at a different conference where there is conference dinner very soon, so I have to leave for that. But thank you for the invitation to stay. I should have really wanted to be with you. I always like to join people who are interested in reproducibility. But on a side note, my daughter is studying in Boulder, so Colorado now. So it would be extra good fun for me to be there with you. But thanks a lot for inviting me. If you have questions, if you're interested in anything, let me know. I'll share my presentation, or you already have it. So please just share it with everyone who wants it.
I have questions, and I myself am going to email, but we are running a little behind schedule.
Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.